So this video raises the question of whether the COVID-19 pandemic is really a pandemic or not. During the process, we will examine COVID-19's mortality rate and COVID-19's case fatality rate. We will try to explain what they are, and I will try to show what they are in a graphic way, which will make the whole thing understandable for everyone, hopefully. I will try not to impose my thoughts on you, so I will raise the question. I would be happy for you to come up with your own answer to the question, and I'll be happy to see your views on the comments below. Before we get into the thing, I want to talk about a couple of things. On Worldometer on the internet, one can find a number which is total deaths globally from COVID-19. And today, on the 12th of the 12th month of 2021, the number is 5,320,259 people. There have been scientists that have expressed their concern about this number. A lot of scientists believe that the number is exaggerated. They think that a lot of these deaths are actually with COVID rather than from COVID, meaning that a lot of the people who have died and have been registered as victims of COVID-19 had simply tested positive on a PCR test, while their death had little or no relevance to COVID-19. Another concern that scientists have is about the way the PCR tests are being executed. They have said that the way the PCR tests are executed produces a lot of false positives. In goodwill, for the purpose of this video, I will consider that the number of deaths from COVID globally up to this point is the figure that appears on Worldometer, the 5.3 million people that I mentioned before. So let's take a look at mortality rate, how we can get a view on mortality rate from COVID ourselves without having somebody else give it to us. So if we take the 5.3 million people who have died globally since the beginning of this thing, this number is the number of deaths that have occurred since the beginning. So it's almost 2 years. So to calculate mortality rate, we have to find the number of people who died in a year or who die in a year from this thing. So this thing has been going on for less than 2 years, but generally I would think more than 1.5. But I will gladly say that it has seriously been going on, in the sense that it was really a widespread thing for 18 months. So I will divide the 5.3 million by 18 to find how many people die per month, and then I will multiply 12 times to find deaths per year. So if we do the math, we will find that 3.5 million people die every year from COVID-19. Okay, so to find the mortality rate, what we have to do is divide the 3.5 million people by 7.9 billion people, which is the population of the world, of the planet, and then what we'll find is the global mortality rate of COVID. To get a rough understanding, if this figure here was not 3.5, but it was 7.9 million people, if we put that against the 7.9 billion people, then we would find that one person would be dying out of every 1,000 people. But because 3.5 is basically half of 7.9, we understand that it's actually half a person dying in a year out of every 1,000 people. And if we do the exact math, we get to these figures here. Basically, it means that we have 5 people dying in every 10,000 people. Basically, the mortality rate is 0.05%. This figure here is a division of 3.5 by 7.9 billion. So we have 5 people dying in every 10,000 people from COVID in a year. What this means, if we want to see it in a graphic way, let's see this. This is 10,000 people you're looking here. You're looking at 10,000 people. Every little square, every square millimeter is a person. So, in 10 centimeters, you have 100 people times 100 people is 10,000 people. Okay? So, if you want to see in a graphic way what the pandemic looks like, we have in a year out of 10,000 people, 5 people dying. So, here are 5 people dying in a year. So this is how the pandemic looks like. Does that look like a pandemic? I don't know, it's up to you. We have also to take into consideration that the average age of people dying from COVID is very close to life expectancy. So, could the death of 5 people out of every 10,000 people really affect mortality from all causes? I personally don't think so, but as I said, I'm interested in seeing your thoughts on this. But to get an understanding of what excess mortality is, because this is the question is whether COVID-19 could affect excess mortality from all causes. Let's see the example of a war versus the example of a disease from a virus. If every year there's a certain number of people dying of old age, basically. If there's a war, you have an extra number of people who wouldn't be dying because they were young soldiers. So if there's a war, you have excess mortality. If you have a virus that kills people who were bound to die sooner or later, who were close to life expectancy, then you should not expect the virus to really affect mortality from all causes. So you should not really expect excess mortality. So let me try to make this little scenario, trying to be humorous, if one is allowed to be humorous when talking about death. Suppose you're on a helicopter overlooking a little town of 3,000 houses and 10,000 people, and you have the co-pilot and pilot talking, and the pilot says, "Hey Jim, you know, in this town, last year 5 old people died from some virus." And his co-pilot goes, "Shit, let's not land here. Let's get the hell out of here." Could you really see this dialogue as happening? I don't think so. There are a lot of people who say that the reason why so few people die from COVID is because we took measures, because we had lockdowns, and because people get vaccinated or whatever. Now, what if everybody contracted the virus? Professor Jean-Pierre Ioannidis from Stanford University calculated the case fatality rate of COVID-19. The case fatality rate is the ratio of people dying from COVID-19 to the people who contracted the virus of SARS-CoV-2. So, what if we delivered gladly the virus amongst us? What if we French kissed everyone so that we would all contract the virus within a year. If such a thing occurred, according to John P.A. Ioannidis, Professor John Ioannidis from Stanford, what would happen is this: 23 people would die in every 10,000, because Ioannidis calculated the case fatality rate of COVID-19, and he calculated it to be 0.23%, which means that 23 people die in every 10,000. So rather than 5 people, if we gave the virus to everybody around us within a year, rather than 5 people out of every 10,000, 23 people would die out of every 10,000. So the pandemic would look like this. It could look like this. So this could be your pandemic. So the question to be repeated is whether this is a pandemic, meaning something that affects all the people, because this is what pandemic means. It comes from the Greek words pan, meaning everyone, every, and demos, meaning the people, something that affects all the people. Is this something that affects all the people? Is the scenario we're facing something that justifies extreme lockdowns, something that justifies mandatory vaccination for everybody, including the children? You will have to find the answer for yourselves. On my behalf, I just want to say that I'm not an expert in any field related to our topic, and the reason why I'm pointing this out is because I think that it is not always the case that governments have the best interest of the people in mind. And to be responsible as a citizen means that you have to do the research and use your mind to understand what's happening around you. You should not take things for granted. This is all I had to say, I think.